Hi there, Wayne Jennings here. My son Brad and I only had a weekend and we wanted to plan this getaway where we could get out and paddle the magnificent waters of Georgian Bay. And we found an amazing route, and it begins just north of Point-a-Barrel, Ontario. A short paddle brings us out to the bay where we claimed this rock island as our own. There's no one else around. We camped here last night. This is truly paradise.
We started our trip on Giroux Lake and we made our way down the Giroux River. Now the Giroux River, it's kind of narrow and shallow in parts, but this is almost August and it is a high water year, but there was ample flow through most of the river. There are several beaver dams and liftovers you have to negotiate, but there's only really one major obstacle, which is a short little portage around a small waterfall. The river really kind of meanders between sandy banks and large rocky outcrops and through a series of wetlands and flanked by nice pine trees and silver maples. And then after that, the Giroux River straightens out into Norgate Inlet here on Georgian Bay. And once you get out here to Georgian Bay, you're met with this amazing landscape of smooth glaciated rocky islands and windswept pines. Once we got out here, we could really camp wherever we want. This rugged northeast shore, it's mostly conservation reserve or provincial park or crown land, so there's ample camping opportunities all around here. You could literally spend weeks and weeks paddling the coast and just camping from island to island. And we set our sights on a series of rocks just about 1 kilometer offshore, Norgate Rocks and Red Rock. And we actually stayed on Red Rock, a large treeless sort of island, just really out there. Gorgeous views of sunsets, and you can see the Cloche mountain range way off in the distance. Just breathtaking 360-degree views out there in the middle of Georgian Bay.
After an easy 4-kilometer paddle down Giroux Lake, we enter the Giroux River, beginning our westward journey towards the Georgian Bay coast. Now, we really had no idea what to expect on this 8-kilometer stretch of water. You see, this was not a publicized or documented route. We didn't know what the water levels would be like or how many obstructions we might encounter along the way. We had, in fact, chosen this route based on satellite imagery. From high above, it certainly looked like a passable route out to the bay. Turns out, it was a pretty good choice. There was your typical beaver activity along this river. We encountered half a dozen beaver dams that required us to get out and lift the canoe over. And there were a handful of blowdowns and toppled trees along the way. Most of them we could easily squeeze by. But a few required a little extra work.
We should be able to get over top of that.
Good work.
That should just sink right under as we go over top of it now.
Sounds good.
Perfect. And if not, we'll saw some more.
And we only encountered one portage. It was short and easy around a small set of rapids. By early afternoon, we were off the river and heading out into beautiful Georgian Bay, with our sights set on an island campsite. After exploring the many near-shore islands, we decided to head about 2 kilometers offshore and check out a group of islands known as the Norgate Rocks. This cluster of small islands had once been the location of a marine navigational tower, but was now home to hundreds of nesting birds. Seagulls and cormorants were everywhere. Not wanting to upset this thriving bird colony, we paddled another half a kilometer to an adjacent island called Red Rock. From a distance, this small island looked a little inhospitable. After all, it was just a treeless, barren, windswept rock surrounded by open water. But as we got closer, it began to look more appealing. And once we made landfall and began poking around, we soon realized that this was the ideal location to set up camp for the night. What we found was a large, flat, open area, ideal for setting up our tent. The smooth, weather-worn granite was warm underfoot, radiating the heat from the midday sun. There were no trees for shelter or firewood, but the forecast called for a calm, warm night, and, luckily for us, we had gathered ourselves a supply of firewood earlier that day, as we made our way down the river. We found it a bit odd that this island had been given the name Red Rock, as there were no red-colored rocks to be found anywhere. Oh, sure, some of the granite had a slight pinky hue to it, but for the most part, this was one big slab of gray granite poking up from the depths of Georgian Bay. It was not until later that evening, as the sun sank lower in the sky, that we began to notice the landscape around us changing. You see, the gray-pink granite began to take on a warm red glow, befitting this island's name. We were on the water early the next morning, taking advantage of the favorable weather conditions. Our route back was a bit different, as today we would spend time exploring some of the smaller windward islands. After a midday lunch beneath some majestic windswept pine trees, we reluctantly pointed our canoe to the east and began the return journey, heading upstream on the Giroux River back to our awaiting car.